Julia, this is the first time you've been with me, so we're going to have to ask you to introduce yourself, please. About 60 seconds. If you could tell everyone how you got here to be the CEO of Data for Real.
Well, I found the name that I liked when I started thinking of creating my own company. But before I created Data for Real, I've spent over 25 years in the financial services and very large corporations with the names that are very familiar to people. Citibank, Deutsche Bank, some of them are purely American, but like Voya Financial or FINRA or you name it. So worked for over 25 years in large financial organizations, leading data and technology transformational initiatives. And then after having done this, I was like, yeah, I think I'm done working for large corporations. And I want to work with multiple clients, maybe in different industries, and help people maximize the value of data and AI assets that they have. And that's what I've been doing. And I've been teaching about it, and I've been doing consulting work. So there is a variety of things I've been doing almost in the last 3 years. So that's how I ended up here.
Super. So, Julia, congratulations on a great career. Now, you are here because I am on a mission to get more data leaders to come and talk to me about not just what is it, but like how does it work? How do you get the job done? And some of the important elements around this. Now, we can get straight into it. Your work caught my eye because you talk about a concept called political capital. So it gives this idea a name of, how do you influence? What things do you need to think about? And who else do you need to think about? And all of these things. And I suppose I wanted you here because as I've gone through my career, I started being a coder and thought that was the most important thing. But as the years passed, I learned all of these soft skills as I went into management and did some of these other things myself, but it never really had a name. I just thought it was like, I don't know, trying to do the best job I could. But you've named this, so I don't know if you've invented it, but to me you have. So I would love to cover that in a talk today, Julia, and I'm going to put it to you straight away. It's like to give us a definition, please. So political capital is what caught my eye. How do you define it, please?
So political capital is amount of influence that you have within the organization. It's a very simple definition, and there is a lot more to actually doing that. I don't think I invented it. I didn't invent the concept because it took me really long time in my career to realize that was even there. But I do think that I've named it political capital. I think the naming of the concept was kind of mine after I learned what it is. And this is, again, it's influence and how much you can move your agenda forward and how you spend it. So there is a lot of it has to be how you acquire it and how you spend it and how do you do it, how do you manage in the wisest possible way.
Okay, so the acquisition of political capital and then your utilization of it. So
yeah.
I was thinking of, when we planned this call, I was really thinking about when people move, say, in a data role or an analytical role, you move out of this individual contributor as the years pass, and maybe you become a team lead or something. And this is the first time you really have an agenda, perhaps. Often you're doing technical work on your own or maybe teamwork, but the time where you have to deliver for others, or you have other external people as customers, or you have to just show that you can innovate. This is another flavor of it. So what kind of tips would you have or ideas would you have for like the individual contributor moving into team lead? Like what should they be thinking about for acquiring their political capital and spending it? Like what kind of the important points for them?
So, John, and you're right, this is important inflection in the career, and most people don't even pay much attention to politics and influencing before they move there. But in fact, I wish I thought about it way before I became a first-time manager. Because the thing you need to think about and it's always, once you become a manager, for as long as you have a manager, you not only need to think about your political capital, but the political capital of your boss. Because a lot of things as individual contributors, you want to have a different project, or you delivered something and it's either good or it's bad. And if you delivered something and it diminishes your boss's political capital, you can't then go and ask them to expand it on your behalf. So you need to think about it, even if you're an individual contributor, not only yours, because also a lot of individual contributors do have influence. You do want to have influence within the organization. It may be not moving big strategic things forward, but it's making the right decision. For example, as a developer, a big part of our, conflict or challenges that you do, sometimes you want to do something in a more effective way, but it's going to take longer. Or you want to put more resiliency in the code. So let me give you an example. For example, when I started as a developer, and I was developer at Bloomberg, and I was the most junior when I started. I was the most junior member of the team. It was right after the college, and I took over. And what happens with the junior members of the team? They take over the code from more senior people of the team, so more senior people can go do more stuff. So the code I took over was from a guy who churned a lot of code and functionality, but he never structured it. And he didn't follow any of the coding best practices. So he could make any change. So for example, naming variables in a meaningful way. Or if there is a piece of logic calculating something, encapsulating it in one program and then calling it every time you needed to get that value. He's never done it. He just cut and paste, and then he did that. But he did things very, very quickly because he knew all of this code. He wrote it. So the boss, my boss, his boss and my boss was very used to quick turnaround, and he gives me this work, and I have to make a small change, but I see this and like, I can't work like this. It's now my program, and I have to go and clean it up, create meaningful names, break the code apart, make sure that all of the stuff that software development best practices. And I had to make an argument to my boss that it's going to take me longer. He didn't like it. So I expanded. So how it relates to political capital, I actually expanded some of my political capital. Where did I have it? Well, it's mostly because he kind of forgave it because I was new, and he was like, okay, she's a newbie and she's gonna, take longer than the most experienced guy I have. And I guess I have to live with it because what am I gonna do? But then I built up on it because the changes going forward I have done much faster, and they were much more reliable. And the code was much more resilient and easier to transition to the next more junior person. So first, I expended a little bit of a capital that I really got just by being a newbie, so very, very little. But then, of course, I've done it. I've built up some more trust with my boss to give me more work and more interesting work versus, there is always work that's not particularly interesting in the programming team. So that's kind of an example of, and I didn't think about it, by the way, as a political capital. Just looking back, I'm analyzing what happened there. But if you think about it, then you can be much more thoughtful about where you do that and where you don't do that. So that's where it's individual contributor piece of that.
Got it. So you begin acquiring political capital sometimes way before you ever need to spend it. So even when you're an individual person, your boss, stakeholders, other teams are still seeing you. And even if you're very focused on narrow work, perhaps, or technical work, you're still generating this capital by making sure everything's on time and so on and so forth.
Yes, and doing good work and being a reliable person for your boss to go to. And that's also a path for promotion, by the way. So the more you make your job work visible and the value of it visible, the more you are recognized, and there is a much higher probability that you will get promoted. So when you get promoted, by the way, you get, again, every time you step into a new job, you get a little bit of political capital just by the virtue of having stepped into that job. It's kind of a loan. You can spend it down and then you don't have, you're in the negative, or you can keep building on it. But you have a little bit where you can, and the higher position that you step into, the more of that kind of advanced political capital you get. But the more careful you have to be with it, because it's really easy for people to take it away if you don't deliver on the promises or don't communicate the value how you've delivered.
Got it. So you're saying you're proactively gathering your political capital knowing where you're going to use it in the future.
Yeah,
So the
it's
promotion is
gathering. Yeah, and what I mean, by the way, one of the things I want to be careful. I don't mean playing politics. I don't mean acting in bad faith or undermining anybody else. It's more bringing value to the group that you're in, to the department you're in, and to the company overall. That's one. And the second one is making it visible. So the reason I said that it took me really, really long time to get there is because I always was good at delivering stuff, but I never paid much attention to communicating the value of what I have delivered, both as an individual contributor, but also as a manager, like first line manager of the team. It took actually working for the boss who was incredibly good at this. And the first time I became aware that I was missing something in my view of the world was when I didn't get the highest possible rating for my performance. And it was like about 15 years into my career. And I went to my boss with whom I had a really good relationship. I was like, why didn't you give me the highest rating? How could you not? Like, I've done so well this year, and you seem to have liked what I have done. And he said, sure, I could have expanded my political capital, or I could have expanded my influence of getting you the higher rating, or I could hold that amount of influence back and expand it when it came time to give you more higher bonus. And knowing you, I assumed you would prefer higher bonus versus slightly higher performance rating. Like, well, yeah, you're totally right. But like, well, it was a choice. I can either do it now or I can do it when the bonus comes around. So that's what I did. I'm like, I never thought about it that way. And and then I look back at my career. I'm like, oh yeah, so many times I've expanded my influence at the time when it was not really important. And then I didn't have enough left when it was really important. So, and that started the whole thinking about political capital. And that's when I named it. And I started thinking much more proactively about that. Still takes a while.
Yeah, it's a good tip. I mean, I once started my career in big corporates, and I would remember end of year performance ratings would go through these validation steps. So the team leads go to the heads of department who have the chance to maybe slightly veto some of the decisions or at least validate and input into them. The next layer of management do the same, and so on and so forth. So I guess this is a similar example to your case with the boss there. Julia, let me rewind you slightly. So when I said we've got the case where the individual contributor steps up, and you just said a moment ago, if someone wanted to proactively think about this, you kind of say, well, you're delivering on within your group, in your department, and then against the company's goals. This sounds to me like a simple model that somebody could look at and just look in the mirror and ask themselves, like, am I delivering, 70% of the time of my effort is in and around my group that rely on me. 20% of the time is in the management layer, and 10% of the time is I'm making sure I'm showing that I'm doing these company things. Is that too simple, or is there any other thing that like a first-time manager could be considering, or a way to look at it?
So one of the things, presumably, your team goals and your department goals and your company goals are aligned. Sometimes explicit goals that you have, especially if you do data work, sometimes it's difficult, especially when you're kind of not at the top of the organization, but somewhere in the middle, is to see how what you're doing moves the company forward. And sometimes, especially data people, get very much married to the idea I'm doing the right thing. They may not realize that's the right thing, but I'm doing it, and I'm going to do, and they work themselves to the bone, trying to do all the possible right things, and then saying, well, and why am I not being recognized? Well, because the values has not been tied. So one of the things is it's knowing yourself of all the things that you do, because there's so many things as both technology and data leaders that you can do and you should do. And it's never ending, right? The amount of things you need to do, should do, would do is always a lot more than the amount of time and resources that you have to do that. You have to pick the ones that the most visibly tie to the value of the company, or to the value to your boss, to the most important things to your boss and to the most important things to your company. It's a really difficult line to walk because sometimes those things may not be the ones that you feel long-term will make difference for the company. And that's a really hard one to walk. And some of it is communication, and you have to find a way to communicate the value of those long-term things. You can't just go do them without that communication layer and making it very clear and keep reinforcing it, and also doing some of the things that are obviously tied in, that makes a difference to the company. Because if you keep doing those long-term things, you're expanding your political capital, and promotions, even use of what you're doing is not going to be what you want it to be. Does that make sense, by the way, John? Because I
Lots
know
of
it's a
sense.
little
Yeah.
bit,
So taking care on goal alignment, that it kind of reflects the North Star metrics and goals of the company, is one way of just stacking the chips in your favor. So when your goals are aligned and you manage your communications on top, it's more likely you'll generate the right kinds of political capital for when you need support or it's bonus time and so on and so forth. Let's jump across to another case, Julia. So you've worked in these big financial brands and so on and so forth, and big corporate companies. There's this case of the individual moving to manager, and you become team lead. And just my opinion, but often the next move is sometimes external. So to sort of break through into more senior management, head of department or department director, is sometimes like a change of industry or vertical or somewhere else that gives you that opportunity. How does this all become different when you move into like department lead, where you have 3 team leads, way more external people needing things from you or pulling on your time, and just the runway is shorter? When you get into that role, often it's I know you said when you were coding there, you had very little political capital, but sometimes when you're senior management, you're expected to hit the ground running because you have some experience and so on and so forth. Is there anything you can think of that's different in that scenario compared to the one we discussed before?
Well, your work has to be now much more on communication and dealing with external stakeholders. And in the newsletter that started, got you reading my stuff, I spent actually newsletter on different types of stakeholders and how you align on values. So one of the things what happens that a lot of people who are really good technically, they move into those positions and they don't realize majority of the job is actually not technical. It's communicating what you do to different stakeholders, understanding what stakeholders need, understand the value, understand how what you do aligns with their value, and also figuring out which battles are worth fighting and which ones are not. So this is one of those things: don't die on every hill and don't go uphill all the time. Sometimes it's much better to get basically, God, I forgot the word, so you have to cut this out. People who are like your allies with you, and maybe you get an ally and that's why pre-meetings come in. I used to hate having pre-meetings, but sometimes you pre-meet, you understand, you align on the goal, and you actually let somebody else speak first, and then you support them. So there is a whole choreography how you move agenda forward. And unfortunately, the more senior you get, unfortunately for technical people, the more senior you get, the more you need to think about that. So how do you build those alliances, and how you do bring value to them and they bring value to you, which battle you're going to fight, what's worth it, what's not worth it, and never ever fight the battle that you're going to lose. So if you know upfront that you're going to lose the battle, for example, your boss wants to do something, right? And it's a mandate from the company. You can argue with it. You may disagree that it's a mandate. One of the things that I used to argue bitterly when they wanted to reduce staff, you're going to lose that battle. Nobody is going to, if there is a decision that they're going to cut the budget, you cannot reverse that decision. Just most of the people, doesn't matter how high you run, so you have to figure out how to meet it. And the less resistant you are, the more room you're gonna have for cutting it in a way that's the best for your team. Because what you don't want to be is so resistant that somebody else comes in and starts slashing for you. And it's very bad situation, and I hate, nobody likes cutting budgets, especially nobody likes cutting positions within the team. You're much better off if you're the one controlling of how much you dislike doing it versus being so resistant that somebody else gets brought on in doing it. So all of those is the types of the consideration. So for a lot of technical people, they actually get to that type of managerial position, and then they go, oh my God, I'd rather go back. I just want to be a technical person. I don't want to deal with this stuff.
Thank you for that, Julia. My question was going to be about the winning. Which ones will you win? Which ones will you lose? It's on the tip of my tongue to ask you, which ones did you back down from in your corporate career? Which ones did you always try and win? So the backing down is like, it's company mandated. You have to interpret when the information is given to you, how baked is it? If it sounds done and it involves the CFO or something, you're not going to win that one. What were the ones that you were wishing to win? Like when you were back in corporate, like what things were you quite firm on? Like this is one that I need to make sure is a yes and it goes my way. Are there any examples you can think of on the other side that you were very keen to always win?
The more senior I got, the more important for me it became to win on long-term viability and resilience of what I was building. So the ones I wanted to build, to win on, that I get enough time and resources to build something that will be reusable and can stand up to the test of time. So figuring out how do you push and win on the timeline and explain the value, that's the ones that I wanted to win. So I wanted to, instead of building kind of quick wins, and not that you should build quick wins, but you should build them in a way that build capability, that you can keep reusing and keep building more and more. And that's where the battles that I wanted to win. The other is on using the capabilities that I've built. So you don't want to build it and then they will come. So part of it is making sure that the value is understood and it's easy to use and all of the stuff around the kind of managing data as a product. But the big part is political battle, because people like using their own stuff. Even if it's Excel spreadsheet and you got them a much better way of getting to this data and to those decisions, people still like using their own stuff. So winning that battle is very important. So change management, basically change management battles, those are important.
No, I love it.
That was important to me, but again, yeah.
No, I love it. Thinking ahead about what would make my life easier so that I can have this job for 2-3 years and it will be much more comfortable for me in the future. This is a great tip. Julia, thank you for all your insights on this topic. We're near the end of time, so you've survived your first interview with me. Thank you for doing all this. So it's been great hearing about political capital. You're absolutely right. I was reading some of the things you wrote about this topic and was really interested. And thank you for taking us through those cases of first-time manager, experienced manager, and some of the ways that they can think about it. Thanks for all your insights, Julia. And ladies and gents, this has been ML's Like Teen Spirit.